In this video, I show how to submit a protest against another iRacing driver. Yes, it's time for the nuclear option. And all this from an older gamer's perspective. On the Older Gamers Perspective Discord channel, which exists to help out fans of sim racing and VR users, I have been occasionally sent a private message asking how to report another iRacing driver for bad behaviour, which sadly seems to be a necessary rite of passage that many a new and also veteran driver needs to go through in iRacing. So I'm going to give you a no-frills guide into how to quickly locate and record an incident, how to reduce the size of your video files, and finally how to submit the video to iRacing via the protest form. And I'll mostly be using the iRacing UI and some free applications so that reporting someone else's bad behaviour doesn't leave you out of pocket.
You're not taking my money.
When should you submit a protest? Before I get into the how-tos, it's probably best to chat briefly about the why-tos, or put simply, should you bother reporting another driver at all? This is a very subjective topic. Take a look at Reddit and you will see daily posts with videos showing what one driver feels is bad behaviour, only to find half the replies will agree, while the other half postulates a snowflake theory to the original poster. So be aware, simply believing you have been wronged doesn't mean other people will see it the same way. Worse still, you could actually, unknowingly or not, be the real culprit of this incident, and by making a protest to iRacing you are inadvertently submitting material to the authorities that proves your own culpability.
We good guys are bad guys.
To avoid this messy state of affairs, the first thing you should do before you even think about sending a report is review the incident yourself from multiple angles. iRacing has a very cool replay function to do just this, and I will look at it in detail later in this video. The point is, reports in iRacing are, I would imagine, submitted mostly because one driver has collided with another driver, and possibly both of them think the other one is at fault. By carefully watching the footage, you might be able to judge if the collision was intentional, or was from just very bad driving, or it was simply a driving incident. In other words, just something that happens within the rough and tumble of a fierce race. None of us drop into the grid with the intention of coming second. We all want to win, and sometimes the rigours of accomplishing this can lead to an honest mistake or two, which may or may not need to be reported. Of course, other protests can also be made because of abusive behaviour in chat, either voice or text, but in this case try to remember that in races tempers run hot, and a certain amount of leeway should probably be granted towards ill-tempered comments that occur in the heat of the moment. We are all adults after all, and engaging in a very competitive arena, so try not to get too offended at the occasional off-cuff remark that perhaps turns the air a little blue. That being said, racist and or sexist comments should never be tolerated and should always be reported. Assuming after a careful review of the footage with your cognitive bias set firmly to neutral, you still believe the other driver to be at fault and the incident was either intentional or the result of exceptionally reckless driving, you are fully within your rights as a subscriber to the iRacing service to file a protest, in which case move on to the next section of this video. Setting up autosave and loading a saved race. iRacing can replay every race you have taken part in, assuming that at the end of the race you save the event via the Save Race options box that is accessible once you quit an iRacing session. To make sure you always see this option, go to the Replay tab and toggle on Ask to Save Replay on Quit. If you don't do this and forget to save the race, you won't have the required evidence needed to file a protest, so it's always best to have this feature toggled on. Assuming you have saved your race, then access it from the iRacing UI by going to the Replays section here, and this will bring up a list of races you have saved. This can take a while if you have a lot of races saved. All those races are saved to a slow drive on your system. If you don't see the last race you took part in, click on the date filter here on the left until it does appear. You can also filter using a variety of different options or use the search box here. If the race is not listed, you may have forgotten to save it, and unless someone that you know did save that race, you are now out of options. If you can see the race, click here on this lurid green button, and then from the sim display mode, select Monitor from the drop-down box and click on Launch Sim. If you use VR to race with, make sure this is toggled off to avoid accidentally loading the monitor next time you enter iRacing via VR. If you have no idea how to enter iRacing via VR and you own a Meta headset, see this other video on this channel. If you don't see the sim display mode prompt, then go to Settings down here in the lower left and make sure that Show Sim Display Mode prompt is toggled on. Once the loading has completed, the replay of your race will be available for you to monitor, and you can move on to the next section of this video. Locating and preparing the incident for recording. Once the race has finished loading, you need to find the incident. First, make sure the helmet displayed in the bottom left is your name. If it isn't, click on it and select your name from the list. Now click the right lap arrow to move the race to where the cars are on the grid. The rest of the replay before that point is practice and qualifying, so you may need to click a number of times before you see the grid. When you see the car on the grid, hit the play key at the bottom or use 5 on the number pad to pause the video if it is not already paused. You are now ready to locate the incident you wish to report. Hit 5 again on the number pad to begin playback of the race. Then use Shift plus 6 on the number pad to fast forward the race to the actual incident. Each time you hit 6, the speed will increase. To decrease the speed, hit 5 once again to pause, then 5 again to replay at normal speed. If you know the lap number, you can shorten this search process by clicking here until the correct lap is indicated. If you aren't sure, try using the Control +3 on the number pad, which will skip to the next accident in the race, and Control +1 skips backwards to the previous accident. Once you have located the incident, hit 5 again to pause playback, and use 4 on the number pad to step back a frame at a time until you reach a point before the incident. Holding down 4 will step back multiple frames until you release the key. 6 without shift will also step forward 1 frame or multiple frames if you hold it down, but only while pause is engaged. Once you have the start point about right, use these controls here to flick backwards and forwards between the various angles until you find the right one. I find far chase is a pretty good angle for this, so that's what I'm going to select here. But sometimes rear chase camera is much better if the car is coming up fast from behind. Now you have a better view of the cars with playback paused. Use the 4 key on the number pad to move to a more accurate position that better shows the lead up to the accident. Avoid starting too early, otherwise your recording file will be unnecessarily large, but also avoid starting too late and missing vital information that iRacing might need when making a decision on your protest. Once you have this set correctly, note the number of the car. You might need to change direction of the camera to see this. Once you have that number, write it down on a scrap of paper. It's important to get the name of the driver correct, as your protest will be instantly rejected if you accidentally mention one player's name but are showing footage of a different car. With all that done, you are ready to record the incident. So move on to the next section of this video. Recording the incident. The quickest and easiest way to record a section of a race is by using iRacing's built-in recorder. To get this working, you first need to set up a keyboard shortcut to turn it on and off. This can be found in the Options menu under the Miscellaneous tab. Here on the left, you can set a keyboard shortcut for recording and screenshot. I have mine set to this somewhat convoluted shortcut as I want to avoid accidentally activating it mid-race and causing havoc with my FPS. Set yours now to a memorable shortcut for recording. You can do screenshot as well if you want. Once you have that set up, return to the pause playback. Then hit the keyboard shortcut keys you have set for recording. If this all works correctly, a red dot and recording will appear in the upper right of the interface and you should have heard a beep. Press 5 on the number pad to begin playback. Then when the incident has reached its blood-soaked conclusion, hit 5 again to pause playback, then use the recording keys to toggle off record mode. The MP4 file that was just created by iRacing is saved in your Documents folder under iRacing and Videos. Double-click on this file if you want to review the footage. If it all looks okay, check the file size. This needs to be under 30 megabytes, otherwise you won't be allowed to load it via the iRacing protest page. If it is over 30 megabytes, use a video editor to re-render a smaller version of this file. I use Clipchamp from Microsoft Store because it's free, but any free video editor will be fine. Once loaded, I click on the Create New Video, then drag the clip into the library and add it to the timeline. I can now shorten this clip to get rid of unwanted footage, so I'm going to trim the start of it here, get rid of that part, and then trim the end of it here, which I don't need. I've got a much shorter clip now. And then I'm going to export it here, and I'll choose drafts from the video quality selection list because I'm only submitting a report. I'm not creating anything for YouTube, so the quality doesn't matter that much. Once you click on that option, the video will automatically render straight away and dump it into your downloads folder for some reason. You can find it by clicking here. Rename it. Then I suggest you copy it back to your iRacing folder so that you don't forget exactly where it is. Now if we check the size of this file, you see it's been drastically reduced. We're at 5 megabyte. That's well under the 30 megabyte that were allowed. With all of that done, you are now ready to actually submit your protest. It's a convoluted process. You can understand why people don't want to go through this every evening, can't you? Anyway, move on to the next section of this video where we will submit an actual protest.
Enough! Time for revenge!
Submitting the actual protest. Now that you have the video clip, all clips, you are actually allowed to upload 3 to support your protest. It's time to go through the process of actually making a protest by clicking on the Results tab here and then selecting the race you wish to protest by clicking Results here. Once you're on the results page, you'll see down the bottom there, File Protest. Now, if you hit File Protest a bit too early, in the anger that you feel of the race in some way wronging you and you want to get that protest in right now, well, you can't. You have to wait a certain amount of time. Here it says 17:59 and I can tell you that the time now is 17:39 and I think I finished the race at 17:30. So it's about half an hour that you need to wait until you're actually physically allowed to submit a protest. This is just a cool down process. It just tries to make sure that in the heat of the moment you don't file a protest against something silly, some racing incident that you've probably done yourself and you really shouldn't be protesting it and wasting the iRacing protest team's time. So give it half an hour and when that time out has elapsed, you can come back and vent. Or you can use this time productively to collect your video evidence using the methods I detailed earlier, or even jump into another race and make this protest the next day. Personally, I would recommend the latter and do it another day, as a bit of time and distance between the actual race and reviewing the replay can add a great deal of perspective to the situation. But you do you. So, half an hour later, when the timeout has finished, or perhaps even the next day, you are ready to create the protest. To do this, again, you're clicking on the results, bringing up the results page, and then there's your file protest button at the bottom there. Now if you click on that, here is the possibility to vent your protest towards iRacing. They love getting these things, trust me. You can see there's some warnings here. You want to read this text. It says racing accidents happen, things go down, It's all part of life. Don't feel that every single act is in some way a negative act of deliberate intent. I was in a race today and the driver at the front got crashed out. I mean, basically due to a driving incident. And he wrote in the chat, "I'm going to get all of you banned." and to be honest with you, I feel him, I get that emotion. I understand it, but it's not always the correct emotion for the event that has occurred. Sometimes these things are just accidents. We are all imperfect human beings. So you've decided the person who did impact with you definitely was at fault. So you're going to file a protest. You bring up the page, the time limit's expired, you hit continue. Here you can select the violation, and we've got here, competition issue. Read the driving code for this. There's loads of rules about that one. Voice and or text chat. This is the one that I was telling you about. If you feel somebody's being sexist or racist, this is the option you select. Forum violation. I'm not quite sure what that's about, to be honest with you. Why? Perhaps you read something on the forum and then you report it here. That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? I don't know what that one is. And retaliation or intentional wrecking. Now, this is probably the main one that most people select. They feel that somebody has intentionally wrecked them, or they have retaliated because you tapped them on the bumper or something like that, and they decided you were going down. If that's happened, that's the one you want to put. And if somebody's blocking you, if they were going slow towards the finishing line or something like that, but they were swerving all over the track to stop you coming past, in other words, not really driving to their driving line, but just intentionally stopping you from overtaking them, that's the one that you want to put there. As I say, most people will probably do that one. And then you need to pick the driver name. I won't click on this because I don't want people's names to be shown, but you drop that down and then you've written down the car number. You should be able to match that up to the driver name. If you can't find that, exit this, go back into the results, and you'll find the driver name next to the driver car there. But really you should be writing all these sort of things down, and then you just write something in here and an explanation of what occurred. And then of course you hit here to attach your video file. Click on it, browse to where the video file is and attach it. Here you can see the 30 megabyte limitation that is on this file attachment. I do wish iRacing would bump this up a little bit because 30 megabyte is very, very small. Once you've filled in everything, selected the driver's name, attached however many video files you wish to do, you hit the submit button and away it goes out into the world. Over to iRacing to be judged whether or not it was evil intent or whether or not you're just being a snowflake.
Snowflake!
What happens next? After you submit a protest, you should receive an email that confirms iRacing has received your submission. This is just an auto email though, so don't get too excited. Much later, perhaps a day or two, you will then receive an email that says one of two things. Either it will say, "We viewed the incident, but didn't think it was malicious," which means that they don't think it was deliberate or bad, and no further action will be taken against the driver in question, although maybe that driver might be monitored in the future. Or the email will say, somewhat cryptically, that the driver has been notified of the outcome, which appears to be iRacing terminology for agreeing with you in this particular case, and saying that the other driver was not only at fault, but broke one of the many racing rules that governs iRacing behaviour. In this case, the driver in question is either warned or punished. You won't know either way if it's a warning or a punishment, or if it is a punishment, what that punishment will look like. This is, as far as iRacing is concerned, the end of the matter. And if that all feels like a lot of work to get to this somewhat vague acknowledgement of wrongdoingness and a long way from the closure you are looking for, you would be right in thinking that. However, that is the way the protest system works in iRacing. If you look up the driver's profile that you protested against, you might be able to see if they were suspended by noting they haven't raced at all since iRacing sent you the punishment confirmed email. But this might also mean they were just taking a break from sim racing for lots of other reasons. There is just no way to tell, and rather sadly, this is just the way it is. A lot of work on your behalf for not a lot from iRacing. But having said that, how could it be different? Comment below if you have any ideas.
I never got closure.
Conclusions. The fact that I get requests for details on how to submit a protest as a private message speaks volumes about how people view the whole murky process of reporting fellow drivers, and would seem to indicate some people are hesitant to even admit to doing this at all. And yet there are times when reporting another driver for bad behaviour on the track is to the benefit of us all. I personally don't submit a protest that very night or even straight after a race, partly because all the faffing about with recording a replay often naffs me off more than the actual incident itself, and partly because I would much rather be racing than reporting. Having a bad race is annoying. I know this from personal experience, and can give you a deeply negative view of iRacing or sim racing in general. But if you jump back into another race straight after the rough one, instead of spending time reporting, you could possibly have a much better experience. You might even have a great race, which goes a long way to alleviating the stress of your day, which is, after all, one of the reasons we all want to go sim racing in the first place. The process of submitting a protest is a bit of a pain. There is no other way of looking at it. And considering that you may never know if it actually made a difference, it can also feel a little futile. However, don't let that put you off from reporting a driver who is being a pain, either to you or to the sport in general. Those people who deliberately wreck for whatever reason are not good for the longevity of sim racing. And the more they are reported, the better the sim racing experience will be for everyone. If you had a bad experience on iRacing or any other sim and you would like to vent, then can I suggest either doing so in the comments below or joining the Older Gamers Perspective Discord channel and venting there. There'll be a link below. We are a friendly bunch with a great deal of technical knowledge between all the members, so come and join and say hello. In the meantime, I hope you found this video helpful, and until the next one, race clean, and I'll see you on track. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Click the little bell icon if you want to be notified of any future videos.